Let's talk about story number 2. Assassin's Creed Shadows has been delayed to February 2025. This is Wesley Inpool at IGN. Ubisoft has delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows by 3 months. The open-world adventure game was due out November 12th, 2024. It now launches February 14th, 2025. In a statement, Ubisoft said it needs more time to polish and refine the experience, pushing further some of our key features. Meanwhile, Ubisoft confirmed that Assassin's Creed Shadows will release on Steam, unlike the company's previous major release, Star Wars Outlaws. Pre-orders will be refunded, and all future pre-orders will be granted the first expansion for free. In a note to the investment community, Ubisoft said that while Assassin's Creed Shadows was feature complete, the learnings from the release of Star Wars Outlaws led us to provide additional time to further polish the title. Star Wars Outlaws had a softer than expected launch, Ubisoft said. So we got a few stories in one here, the big headline here being that Assassin's Creed Shadows is being delayed to February 2025. Paris, what do you think about that?
I'm not surprised. Obviously, we heard rumblings earlier in the week about the preview event being delayed. And as soon as I heard that, I go, then they're probably going to delay the game itself. So seeing this news come out that it was delayed to February isn't shocking to me. And I always just take the stance with delays. If you need more time to make the best game that you can, take more time to make the best game that you can. So, I mean, we'll see it in February.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always of the same mind, right? Like, you delay the game if it's going to make it better. Take your time with it. You don't want to release something that's going to have a fucked up launch or is going to have all these bugs at launch, is going to have all these issues. We've seen how many times that is like tainted launches of otherwise like pretty good games. You know, when you're playing something that is, oh no, I like this or I'm enjoying this, but I'm being hindered because the performance is bad or because there's a game-breaking bug that's going to break my save and all these things. We've seen that happen. I believe we saw that happen with Star Wars Outlaws even, where people who got the game before a certain point like were advised to restart their save and update because of some game-breaking bug, right? That they're at risk of. That type of shit you don't want to happen, especially for a launch of something that is going to be one of your main titles, right? When you're talking about Ubisoft, you're talking about Assassin's Creed being usually the main launch year to year, and especially this year coming off of Star Wars Outlaws, which I would say is the other main launch for Ubisoft. You had some of those issues already. You want to avoid those going into the next one. Some context I want to bring in here. I believe Barrett added this to the doc as we were going. And this is one that I saw this morning, but it's kind of context to this Assassin's Creed story, which is why I'm keeping it in here. I want to put in an article from Insider Gaming written by Mike Strahl about how Star Wars Outlaws underperformed, and that Ubisoft has confirmed. Ubisoft has officially confirmed that Star Wars Outlaws underperformed internal expectations. The revelation came via a financial targets update from the company on Wednesday. In a release and subsequent conference call, Ubisoft said that the game's release was softer than expected. That's despite what they called solid ratings. Quote, additionally, despite solid ratings, a Metacritic of 76, and user scores across the first-party and Epic stores, 3.9 out of 5, that reflect an immersive and authentic Star Wars universe, Star Wars Outlaws' initial sales provided softer than expected, Ubisoft said. In response to player feedback, Ubisoft development teams are currently fully mobilized to swiftly implement a series of updates to polish and improve the player experience in order to engage a large audience during the holiday season to position Star Wars Outlaws as a strong long-term performer, end quote. Paris, where are you at with Star Wars Outlaws?
I thought it was just okay. I probably fell in the 7 out of 10 range on it. Unfortunately, I mean, I was watching a review you guys did, so I know it was a little harsher than I was. But part of it was some of the technical issues that it had at launch, and you know, the whole stealth mechanic, and there was just other things where I think if this game had more time in the oven to cook a little more, they could have refined some of this stuff and it could have had a better launch. And unfortunately, hearing that they're having lower sales than expected, I'm not surprised considering the state that the game was in at launch. Will it improve over time? I'm sure it will, but it's just an unfortunate after effect of that, which probably plays into the fact why they're delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows, to make sure that they get it right when it comes out. So bummer, unfortunately, especially coming from Massive, but again, not too surprised.
Barrett, what's up?
I'm worried, man. I'm worried about Ubisoft a little bit here. With Outlaws and then with Assassin's Creed being the two big pillars for their year. Obviously, Prince of Persia was a hit. I don't know sales-wise like how much the critical
Sales-wise, I don't
acclaimed.
think it was as much of a hit.
Yeah.
I forget if
No,
they had
it
that
wasn't.
official, yeah.
So I worry for Ubisoft because they've had like a very dry few years. You know, there's a couple of years where just like, when are they releasing games? You know, like for the longest time, all they had was like Mario and Rabbids 2, which was so bewildering. And then you get to these two big games finally coming out within the same year, Star Wars Outlaws and Assassin's Creed Shadows. You have Outlaws underperforming, and then you have Shadows being delayed until next year to February, literally the day after Ghost of Yotei gets announced for 2025.
Barry, you're stepping on my talking points. I'm gonna let you finish.
Let me finish here, and I know this is a super chat, but this is just something that I'm thinking about, and I'm just like kind of worried about. Is like, oh, do you think people are gonna get fatigued with like open world Japan game? No, I don't think so, because I don't think people are gonna play Shadows now because they're just gonna be like, well, I know I like Ghost, and like Assassin's Creed I'm not as into, so I'm just going to wait for Ghost.
Samson L writes in with a super chat and says, Ghosts of Yotei and Assassin's Creed Shadows, both in 1 year. Will we get open world Japan game fatigue? I think it's a fascinating question. I don't think them being in the same year is the problem as far as the like feudal Japan samurai style game fatigue of it. I think maybe there's worries there as far as like, when it comes to award season in 2025, will people care anymore about Assassin's Creed Shadows when they just got Ghost of Yotei? I think that might be a bit of concern. I do think, though, that like we have gotten a lot of games in the setting in the last couple years, especially by the time we get to the end of 2025 when we have both these games out. I even bring in Rise of the Ronin into the equation, where already this year you had Rise of the Ronin and Assassin's Creed Shadows, right, which are competing in the same sort of like genre of video game. Next year, you're still going to have those two samurai games come out. I don't know. Like, Paris, for you, do you feel or do you see any sort of fatigue with this style of game?
Yes and no. I think yes, in the Ubisoft style of these open world games, I definitely think there's been some fatigue with that. I think to the point about bringing in with Sucker Punch with Ghost, will that have an effect? Honestly, that game's probably a year away, right? We're probably not going to see it, until next holiday. I think the anticipation for that is way higher as the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, that people genuinely are going to want to go play that regardless if an Assassin's Creed came out earlier that year. So no, I don't think the two are correlate.
This episode's brought to you by Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends over at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair that we've worn. Durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. With an extensive array of styles and colors, you're bound to find the perfect pair of Shady Rays sunglasses. Y'all know I've been outside a lot in the sun playing some Pokemon Go, and it's such a great experience wearing my Shady Rays when I'm out and about looking dope. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal. Head to shadyrays.com and use code KINDAFUNNY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of shades. You can try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. shadyrays.com, use code KINDAFUNNY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of shades. This episode is brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we'll always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims has treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. No insurance is needed. Pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/kindafunny. That's HIMS.com/kindafunny for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/kindafunny. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions, details, and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think Ghost of Tsushima has such a fan base to it and had such
Yeah.
fervor behind it that I think anybody that played Ghost of Tsushima and loved it, they're gonna show up for Ghost of Yote. And I think probably same with Assassin's Creed to some extent. Assassin's Creed, I think just by IP power has a built-in audience that's gonna show up game to game. But I do think that to your point, Paris, what's maybe working against it might be more so Ubisoft fatigue, and I think that's what works against even Star Wars Outlaws here, where I think the state of the launch of Star Wars Outlaws, I'm sure, had maybe a little bit to do with how it performed sales wise.
Mhm.
But I think even if Star Wars Outlaws came out as a fully polished game and didn't have any bugs or didn't have any performance issues, I still think you would be in the same place as Ubisoft as far as Star Wars Outlaws not living up to the same sales expectations. Because I think Ubisoft is a publisher that almost feels to me like is caught in like a 2010 early 2010s era,
Yeah.
like
They are.
state of game development, where I look at Star Wars Outlaws or I look at Assassin's Creed Shadows and I see games that I feel like could have came out 10 years ago, right? And like I think we've gotten so many games that have pushed that genre of open world games forward so much. You're talking about, years after Elden Ring took over the world. We're talking about years and years after now Breath of the Wild took over, and we've had The Witcher 3. We've had even Cyberpunk has built itself back up from launching in a bad state, but being in a place now where you play that game as an open world game. Cyberpunk 2077, pretty fantastic open world video game. And that's not to say that Assassin's Creed hasn't grown, because we have seen it grow. We saw the jump they had with Origins. We've seen them expand and do different things with Assassin's Creed. But I still think at its core, there is a gameplay style and there's a level of budget and polish that is very Ubisoft, which is turned into sort of a bad word now when you talk about Ubisoft games. And I think that's where I come around to where Barrett's at as far as like the worry when it comes to where Ubisoft is I think Ubisoft is in need of some kind of jump, some kind of bigger shift than what we've been seeing.
Well, here's a crazy thing with Ubisoft, just on that point, I know we'll move on, is I'm worried too. And part of it is they have IPs. They have compelling IPs that I want to play. I jokingly say it once a year, and they just did it again when Netflix showed the Splinter Cell anime that's coming out. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Ubisoft, just give me a Splinter Cell. That it's been on the shelf for so long. Beyond Good and Evil 2, it's a freaking unicorn at this point. It's a myth. It's not even going to happen. They obviously have Rainbow Six. They have Ghost Recon. They have IPs that are compelling, but they've just not used them in a very smart way to get consumers excited about it. Instead, we're getting things that feel very cookie cutter from them, and it just doesn't land. Obviously, they tried, what was it? I won't say Hyperspace. It's wrong, but the
Hyperscape.
Hyperscape, thank you. They tried that. Obviously, X Defiant, your mileage varies on that. They're trying things, but nothing seems to be hitting, sticking the landing, so to speak. They were going to spin off the Division and Heartland. They canceled that. So where we are with the Division 3, like, again, they have the IPs. I don't even think that's the issue with Ubisoft. It's just how they're utilizing them seems to be the problem, which I think, again, goes back to this delay with Shadows. They cannot screw this up. And I think they know that. They need to make sure that this is the typical franchise, high-selling Assassin's Creed that we come to expect, and anything short of that could put the company at risk, in my personal opinion. And it's crazy, like when you talk about Prince of Persia. When I think about my short list right now, Game of the Year, that's one they did do right.
Yeah,
I think it's great, but nobody played it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So yeah, they got to do some soul searching, and they got to figure out how to utilize this roster of franchises they currently have, and get them in front of customers to get them excited.
I think to some extent they're in between a rock and a hard place, because you talk about them having the IPs, and I think you're absolutely right. I would compare it to how people talk about PlayStation, or how people have been talking about PlayStation recently, when there was the whole statement about like one of the higher ups of PlayStation, being like, we want to have these IPs that sell and that do these things. And a lot of people were like, what about all these IPs that you haven't been touching? But you look at that list of IPs, and listen, I'm right there with people. I want a new Dark Cloud. I want a Dark Cloud revival.
Yeah.
But you put out a new Dark Cloud's not going to sell. A fucking I had a game. What was the Arc the Lad isn't gonna fucking sell out here. Brave Fancy Musashi ain't doing shit, right? Like, these games as much as I would love for us to get back to Siphon Filter or bring back SOCOM and bring back all these IPs that people love, there is I think an element to it where you bring back these games and they're not going to do Horizon numbers. And I know people hate to hear that, but they're not going to do Horizon numbers. Right. They're not going to do Ghost numbers. They're not going to do Spider-Man numbers. They're not going to do God of War numbers. They're not going to do Last of Us numbers. There's a reason why PlayStation's trying to develop more of those and touch less of like their legacy IP. And it breaks my heart. But when I look at the Ubisoft side of things, I think the rock and the hard place that they're in is that they don't have Horizon and God of War and Last of Us and all these things. They have Assassin's Creed, but I worry about the staying power now of Assassin's Creed. I think you have that built-in audience, you have the legacy, you have all this stuff, but when we get new Assassin's Creed games, how much are they selling now compared to the last Assassin's Creed? Are they going to be able to keep that upward trajectory? You've had Just Dance, which has been a yearly installment of a very highly selling franchise. Just Dance, I don't know if Just Dance is, again, having an upward trajectory. I would assume that Just Dance is probably having a downward trajectory. Barrett, what's up?
It's weird just looking back at the past few years, because we're also in a weird and unprecedented time for Assassin's Creed. I know Mirage came out, but let's understand that Mirage was originally planned as DLC, that then they made into a slightly bigger thing to make it its own standalone game. So taking Mirage out of the picture, by the time we get to Shadows, it'll been roughly 4.5 years since like the last major Assassin's Creed has come out. Valhalla did sell over $1 billion. I don't know how many copies it sold, but like that was a moneymaker. Mirage, not so much. But again, that's a weird one where it was like, and even more interesting because I feel like it had the marketing behind it of like, this is an old school type of an Assassin's Creed game.
For sure. We knew that was going to be a smaller scale game.
Show up for that, you know? So it's interesting because, you know, Valhalla sold so well and did a lot. And I know a lot of that's going to be microtransactions and all the DLC that came with Valhalla backing that $1 billion like mark or whatever. But the kind of like, when people think back to Valhalla, they don't love it. Or whenever I see people talk about Valhalla.
I don't hear people talk about Valhalla with the same reference as Odyssey or Origins.
Well, and they don't talk about it with the same reference as I talk about Valhalla, because I think Valhalla kicks so much ass. And so I don't know, when people think about the last Assassin's Creed game, are they going to be inspired to actually show up for the next one?
Yeah.
To everything that you're saying, this is supposed to be the one. What if people always wanted them to do with Assassin's Creed? Go to Japan. This is supposed to be
to the punch? Who essentially made a Ubisoft game in Japan, and just with just tweaking some things and like a new coat of paint to not make it look like or feel exactly like a Ubisoft game, but essentially like an open world kind of thing that feels similarly structured and made it artsy as hell. Fucking Ghost. And what's coming out next year? Ghost 2!
And here's the thing, right? Because at some point, like I've pitched it to Greg, and Greg already had the idea and put it on the
fans have been asking for Assassin's Creed Japan for 14 years. Why did it take them so fucking long?
We need to have a conversation about 2025 and just overall. Because Noble had tweeted like a list of the games that are coming out in 2025, and it is a crazy list so far. And even just in early 2025, it is a crazy list so far. And part of me and Barrett have had a bet of if me and Andy are going to play through Assassin's Creed Shadows and be committed to it. Barrett, part of like why I've been so confident in this bet is that you look at November, and November is pretty free. Like a lot of my bet was hinging on that game coming out in November. Assassin's Creed coming out in February.
But in November, you need to finish Persona 3 Reload as well. You know?
Yeah, but I have like, 10 hours, 15 hours?
Yeah, you're so close.
80 hours, I don't know. But yeah, like Assassin, I've not checked the calendar yet. And sadly, Game Informer's gone, so I can't just open up the Game Informer calendar anymore. But when is Monster Hunter Wilds out?
February.
When is Avowed out?
February.
Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Same day as Assassin's Creed, by the way.
What are we doing here? We're not setting these games up for success.
Well,
and go for it.
If I could just pause on that one, just as we're talking about that. If I'm Microsoft, if I'm Xbox, I'm having a conversation about, do we move Avowed a few weeks, either forward or back? I don't think they should come out in that window, being a new IP, because allegedly that was the whole reason they were moving out of November in the first place, right? So you're right back to that same problem again.
Yeah, I think if I'm Microsoft and I see Avowed and Assassin's Creed coming out the same day, and there's a conversation of which one has to move, like Avowed is the one. I think
Yeah.
Avowed is the one that you delay and get out the way of Assassin's Creed. I want to bring in a super chat from Nolan Massey Media, who says, "What do you all think about Avowed and Monster Hunter Wilds coming out within 10 days of each other? I'm worried for Avowed now. Thanks for all you do." And we kind of just answered that a little bit, but I'm with you, Paris. I think Avowed needs to get out of there.
And let's not forget, Yakuza and Civ 7 are also coming out around that time too.
See, again, I've not pulled up the
It's
calendar,
insane.
but even without knowledge of it, even without a calendar in front of me, I know for a fact that January, February right now is looking stacked for video games.
Yeah.
But all that to say is, yes, Barrett, I worry about Ubisoft too. Not even just in the context solely of the Samurai shit or even just the Ubisoft ass game, just the entire ecosystem of Ubisoft and like where Assassin's Creed Shadows right now is landing. I'm like, all right.
I think Paris said, I think they need this game to do really, really well.
Yes,
And I
think
don't
so too.
know, with all of the different things that have happened, to line this up for this game to come out in February 2025 in the same year as Ghost 2, 5 years after, or 4.5 years after Valhalla. Like, I don't know if it's being set up well enough to do as well as Ubisoft needs it to do for them to still be what we know them as.
Well, I think a couple things that came out of this announcement goes to what you're saying, Barrett. I think they realize that, and they're trying to do everything possible to get people excited to pick it up day one. Putting it on
That's
Steam is huge. Yes, absolutely. Put it there. And then they're not. So if I'm understanding it correctly, and I have it in front of me, so they're not necessarily getting rid of the season pass, but they basically said, now you get the expansion for free and everything's available to everyone day one. Something like that.
I think the first part of it you're getting for free.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So they're trying to set it up to make it more consumer friendly for sure.
Yeah. And so loop back on the point I was making earlier about like Ubisoft and like kind of operating in an early 2020s era thing. Earlier there was a chat that was like, so they need to release new games, which is part of where I'm getting to, but it also comes back to my argument of the worry about Ubisoft is that they have been releasing new games. They've just not been hitting, right? They had Rainbow Six Extraction that came and went. They had Roller Champions that came for like 2 days and went. And I played it, I liked it, but people weren't playing it. They had the Marvel game that like Mike brought up that came out in like May that we were surprised. Yeah, Barry has that look of bewilderment.
They had a Marvel game?
It was Marvel, not Marvel. Like,
Marvel.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the Marvel game.
Yeah, like the competitive Marvel
They had
game.
Mario plus Rabbids, a sequel to a game that like was very beloved.
To a game that did great.
And people talked about it for half a day.
Yes, and they had, and again, they had a critical hit in Prince of Persia, but Prince of Persia, sales-wise, is not doing what Ubisoft needs it to do to be like, all right, we're back in this. We're still fucking back. We're Ubisoft. We're going to put up, I don't know, man. I think that company needs a bit of a redefinition or like some kind of thing. Maybe we just need to get a Splinter Cell. Maybe we just need to get to, I forget what other big game, Beyond Good and Evil 2. I don't know.
Also, I didn't realize that the new Yakuza game is literally called Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
That's the name?
Oh, yeah.
That's the name.
They don't care.
That's
They're
not
you're
just
buying
like the project name. That's the name they're releasing the game
Well, Barrett,
as.
think about it this way. How else would you know that it's a Like a Dragon game that takes place in Hawaii and has pirates and is also Yakuza, in case you forgot about Yakuza? There's only one thing to name it
here, man.
What do you want them to name it? Like a Dragon 9? Like, get real, Barrett.